Hello everybody. Today I am going to show you my Darklight Citadel Aramia deck. So this is a deck that I built because I wanted to kind of make a deck with the Darklight Citadel, which has always been a tricky location to use. And there are a couple of reasons for it. The first reason would be that when you play the Darklight Citadel, all your allies get readied that have abilities that cost one or more resources, but then you still have to spend resources to activate that ability. So that's why I run this card called Leash of Life. And so Leash of Life says that it reduces the cost of the ability of your ally by 2. So now you can use the ability of that ally for free because all of the abilities in this deck cost 2 or less. Now, it has to be adjacent to your hero, but that can be easily done, usually. Now, here, I'm a little bit careful to not play Twilight Opportunist right away, and the main reason is the fact that I want the ally next to my hero to be reduced by Leash of Life. And Twilight Opportunist can actually be a little bit annoying if it is next to your hero and you can't get rid of it. That's why actually Twilight Opportunist's kill itself effect is so good in this deck, because that way you can actually clear out your own ally, your own Opportunist, by activating its ability. It will die at the end of the turn. And when you do that, then the ally next to it will then be adjacent to your hero. Okay, but anyway, here I'm going ahead and I am just setting up. I'm playing a lot of artifacts, using Tome of Knowledge every turn, because I'm just trying to draw a lot of cards, and kind of wait out until turn 5, turn 6, and that's kind of how this deck likes to operate. You tend to kind of spend the first few turns building up everything, and then you start playing your allies with abilities. And as you can see, Darklight Citadel is actually going ahead and letting us ready our ally and therefore use it immediately. Now that's really good with a card called Ascetic of the Veil. That's one of the 2 main allies we run. It bounces an item to the hand for 2 resources, and it's free when we basically have it next to our hero because of Leash of Life. So I use it to return Distortion Harness back to the hand in this matchup because I'm a little bit concerned about essentially losing too much life against this Darklaw deck, because Darklaw wants to go face. They're going to try and kill me faster than I can deal with, and so it's really important to have armors that help absorb some of that damage. I've been sacking also a lot of those other cards too, not just the any cards that deal with allies, because in this matchup, cards like Shadow Bolt are just not useful. Okay, but you just saw me use the other main ally of this deck, which is Lilith. Now, Lilith is a really good ally because it revives an item or an ally from a graveyard, and so that is your main way to actually build up allies, and it's your main win condition, I would say, because you run you run allies, but we don't run that many allies, honestly, and they're all kind of low attack power allies. So you do struggle with your damage output a little bit until you can start getting Elite going, because Elite summons an ally every single turn, and then you can just overwhelm your opponent with a board full of allies. So I'm holding on to these Supernovas, and I'm not sacking as much because I'm trying to basically set up a situation where maybe I can start dealing enough damage to the opponent slowly, so that eventually I can put him in Supernova range and win the game off of Supernova. So that's why I'm trying not to sacrifice Supernova there. You can see how in this game I've been using Ascetic of the Veil not just to bounce back my opponent's What Big Tease, but to bounce back my own items like Distortion Harness, and now also bouncing back Thoughtful Investment. So Thoughtful Investment and Pathfinder's Machete, these are all cards that are really, really strong, but they have limited durability, or on the field they're kind of useless in the case of Thoughtful Investment, and that's why Ascetic of the Veil is actually a really, really strong card in this deck, not just because it's going to bounce back your opponent's high-cost items and force them to keep replaying them, but because you can bounce back your own stuff and recycle it. So my opponent here, has it all set up basically to start hitting my face, but every ally on this board is really, really threatening. You know, if he lets Lilith live, for example, then Lilith will summon more allies out. And if he lets the Twilight Ritualist live, then Ritualist can exile his Speed Strike or his Lone Wolf. So this is really helping here because that means that he can't go face as much as he would like to, probably. All right, and so now I mentioned one big downside of Darklight Citadel already, and that big downside was the fact that when you summon your own allies, it can be tricky because you still have to activate the ability, so readying them is not always like that good because you still have to then spend the resources to activate the ability anyway. So we fixed that with Leash of Life somewhat so that you can do that. But the other big downside to Darklight Citadel, I would say, is the fact that even if you get it out and you ready your ally and you have Leash of Life, your opponent on their turn can use the non-controller ability. And the non-controller ability says you spend 2 Shadow Energy and your opponent can no longer use the power. So our opponent just used it right now. Spent 2 Shadow Energy. Now I can't use the hero. I can't use the Ascetic of the Veils or the the Ascetic. Ascetic of the Veils or Twilight Ritualists. So that's why we run Distortion Harness, which is searchable through Aramia. It actually helps a lot because what we can do is shuffle back our own location into our deck and search it again. So the reason you shuffle back your own location into the deck is to get rid of the non-controller ability, which will basically unstun you and mean that your opponent spent 2 Shadow Energy for effectively no reason. Okay, now I do want to show a game where I actually ended up losing. This one will be fine, and talk a little bit about the deck's harder matchups. So, like I said before, against the Dark Claw, we were able to play our items out and kind of then summon all our allies later on like turn 5, turn 6. So that's kind of the game plan you're trying to go for. But one of the issues comes up when your opponent runs a really fast deck. And so we're going to see that kind of happen here where our opponent is running a pretty fast Twilight deck, and we aren't really able to deal with his board fast enough. And part of it is also just because of the fact that, so we are kind of off to a really slow start here. We didn't get our turn 1 Tome of Knowledge, and we also didn't get a turn 2 drop like an Opportunist, which would have been really, really nice here. We didn't draw into our Leash of Life, which would have also been really, really nice here. So here, I think I kind of misplay a little bit because, there weren't a lot of good options anyway, but I might have tried searching out something else instead of the Leash of Life, like maybe a Tome of Knowledge or something to search out the location would have been really, really good here. Now the issue is I tried going for this tempo play, exiling his Ritualist, which I really like against Twilights. I like exiling their allies because that keeps them out of the grave, and that's generally a good idea. But the real problem here is the fact that the tempo play didn't work because Ritualist just exiled my Ritualist, which was enough to basically deal with my whole board. And now with Orphic now on 5 health, this is a really dangerous situation. So I basically have to draw into something like something else. So I do kind of wish I searched out the Distortion Harness there instead of trying to kind of get cheeky and exile the Ritualist. I don't think it would have saved me, honestly, in this game. We're so far behind our opponent here that it's just tricky. But here I go for the Shadow Bolt Tome of Knowledge play, so we can start building up some card advantage, which is going to be really important here in this matchup to just keep everything going and yeah, keep us in the game, hopefully. So, yeah, um, let's see. Here, I go ahead and go for the Distortion Harness play. I'm trying to seek out more Darklight Citadels, mostly so I can sacrifice them again later on, because that way, yeah, if I can sacrifice them, that would be nice for just card advantage wise. So that's why I go ahead and search there. Here, I actually, since our opponent used Ritualist to kill our Leash of Life, I wasn't able to use the Darklight Citadel combo with the Aesthetic of the Veil, which was a little bit unfortunate there. As you can see, our opponent took that opportunity to spam the board with so many allies that really I was hoping to draw into a Supernova there, but the Supernova would have not necessarily helped that much because of how that would have triggered Champion and made Champion way stronger too. So yeah, here is a great example of how against any kind of deck that applies a lot of early pressure, you can see it really struggle. Like there was very little we could do early game, and especially with that slower start that we got, it meant that we just couldn't recover fast enough. I think with a slower deck like the Dark Claw, maybe Priests, those are all better matchups. So let's then go over maybe a good matchup. And you can see Lance here also got the better of me. Now that one, that was actually because of Anarchaic Looting. So that's another weakness of the deck. Any kind of mass item destruction is going to clear all of the items you run. It's going to clear out the Leash of Life. And that really makes it hard, especially when you lose your Tome of Knowledge, which is your main draw source, to win there. But yeah, this deck isn't completely terrible against a early rush, and so we'll see that too. Like you still have options to deal with the early game, and so yeah, we'll see this match against Zaladar. If I'm recalling right, this Zaladar is kind of more of a rush deck, so it plays a lot of early allies. Yeah, like Deathbone and stuff like that. So yeah, so even though I'm against a rush deck, I didn't play Twilight Opportunist on turn 2. I played Leash of Life on turn 2. And I actually think that Leash of Life is probably your best turn 2 play, even though Opportunist is really, really nice, because of the fact that you don't really want Opportunist to be kind of like next to your hero and clogging that up. And you can make plays like this, which is Leash of Life turn 2, Twilight Ritualist turn 3, and then turn 4 you play your Tome of Knowledge or whatever, or maybe you play your Twilight Opportunist on turn 4, and on turn 4 that's when you can exile something for free because it's next to your hero and it works with Leash of Life. So here I just go for the Lilith of Orem on turn 4. That's still a nice tempo play. I can start stealing his undead stuff from his own graveyard, so that's really nice there. So Lily of Orem is also just a great 4-drop when you can afford it. So here we're going to go ahead and search out, okay, yeah, Tome of Knowledge, just because it's important to start building up card advantage too, so I go for that there. And then, yeah, just keep building up the board. So this is a really nice board that I'm pretty happy with. So, yeah, here is tricky. I go ahead and sacrifice the location, which I think I later on sort of regret. But the thing is that I have Distortion Harness, so I figured that I could always play Distortion Harness if I wanted the location later. And so that's why I made that decision. Losing the Lit of Oriam here is really painful because actually now we have so many allies next to our hero that It's going to be really awkward to do that kind of thing with the Leash of Life. Here, I think I might have been better off playing the Ritualist, just applying more pressure. As we'll see, our opponent can take care of our board pretty easily there. So I think there were some places in this game where I probably could have played a little bit better. But yeah, here our opponent goes ahead, clears our Crypt Spawn Tormentor and our Corpse Shifter with Deathmage Thaddeus and Oro Battery, and now we're kind of behind a little bit. Here is where I kind of, I probably, I actually don't remember exactly what I did. Oh, okay, so I played Thoughtful Investment here, yeah. I wanted to keep Twilight Ritualist because I like exiling stuff with Twilight Ritualist. So I didn't go for the Opportunist there, and part of the reason was so that I could basically have Ritualist as an option to use. So that was the reasoning there. And so we're going to see I use Ritualist to exile the Deathmage Thaddeus. I actually do think, reflectively, that was really a mistake, because that was basically spending 5 resources to exile something, which just wasn't, the most effective use of 5 resources there, and I do kind of regret doing that. But I end up doing it again just because of Durkan, which I felt like I needed to get rid of. And so I kind of lost the opportunity there to play Lilith and really use that there. So I go ahead and kill the Deathbone with the Twilight Opportunist. I might have wanted to actually kill it with the Veil, but I kind of wanted to keep the Veil because I felt like the Veil is like a better card. But yeah, our opponent was able to just get rid of it anyway, so that's why it might not have been the most effective thing to do. So here we finally play the Lily of Aram, which is nice, to just get that other ally on the board and just start reestablishing our kind of position here. So, and our opponent smartly actually just goes ahead and murders the elite with mind control, but our opponent actually makes an inaccuracy here. I think if our opponent basically used his hero power to hit the Veil, then use Death Collector to kill the Aesthetic of the Veil, that would have put our opponent in a much better spot, because then they can mind control and I lose the entire board instead of just some of the board. It doesn't matter that much because I Supernova here. I guess my thinking process here was I needed to kill that Death Collector before it got too strong. So yeah, that's why I ended up deciding to use Supernova there, even though it honestly wasn't the highest value Supernova. That was a pretty, a relatively weak Supernova, I would say. Okay, so here we drew into our Lily of Orem again, which is really, really nice. That's going to let us revive more allies, establish some board presence, and also Shadow Ball our opponent, which is really nice to just get rid of that ally and just keep applying pressure. We're trying to, win as fast as we can here, and that's going to be our path to victory here. Our opponent kind of notices that, and so they start going phase 2, and here is where I realize, wow, I'm really low on health, actually. So this was kind of an interesting choice because I could have gone ahead and killed the Durkan, but I realized if I kill the Durkan, it's going to go back to his hand, and he can resummon it to use that power. So I ended up deciding not to return the Durkan or kill the Durkan. I might have returned the Oro Battery to the hand instead of returning the Pathfinder's Machete to the hand. But ultimately, our opponent didn't draw into any ability damage, and so here we actually have enough to win the game. So yeah, I think this video is getting a little long, so I am gonna end the video here. I think this does do a good job of showcasing the deck. There were a couple other really good games I had, so it's a shame we don't actually get to see them, but the general idea is pretty simple. We play Darklight Citadel, we use our allies with active abilities, and we really abuse those. Okay, so anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.